Hello, and welcome back to the 6 a.m. Club, where we start our day inspired. As every Saturday, I have for you a new quote. This one is one of my all-time favorites. It's from the author and the book that has impacted my life the most, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the quote is from Dr. Stephen Covey, and it says, "The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities." Let me repeat it one more time. The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. This is something that I try to live by, but sometimes it can be really, really hard. I remember back in 2004 when I took the training, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, there was this video that really made an impression on me. It was a video from the 80s, and you could see Dr. Covey speaking to an audience, and she calls a woman from the audience, and she gives her an empty bucket. And then on the table, there were all these big rocks. And then there was another bucket, the same size as the one that was empty, that was full with little pebbles. And Dr. Covey puts the bucket with the pebbles in front of her, and she gives her the task to make all those big rocks that were on the table fit in the same bucket with the pebbles. And you can see her trying to move the pebbles around to make room for the big rocks, and she successfully put a couple of them in there. And then it started to get really, really hard to move things around to be able to put more of those big rocks in that bucket that was already filled with all these pebbles. Each of these big rocks had a name. Some was an important project or vacation or faith or family. Really, the big rocks in our lives and our careers. And after trying several times, she's at the edge of giving up. And then Dr. Covey tells her, "What about you look at this from a different perspective?" and hands her the empty bucket. And then it was like a light bulb went on. She puts all the big rocks on the empty bucket, and then she dumps all the pebbles on top of the big rocks, which were already inside the bucket. And the pebbles find their way through the big rocks until filling the bucket. The moral of this exercise is the quote that I just shared with you. The key for time management, which is something that we all are seeking, right? What is the secret grill for time management? We all feel overwhelmed. There's so many things coming at us. We wish we had a better way of managing our time. And it's been out there for a long time. Dr. Covey shared it with us. The key is to prioritize the key is not to prioritize what is on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. Meaning when you put those big rocks first, then the pebbles will find their way around the big rocks. And if you don't get to fit all the pebbles on the bucket, that's okay too. The same happens with all the things in our lives and at work and our time. This is something that I have carried over with me since the time that I learned about it. It's something that I try to do every week. I look at my calendar, and I even have color codes on my calendar to highlight what are my big rocks. And I have colors for my pebbles, and then I can see where things fall. So if I have to move something around, it's the pebbles that get moved around, not the big rocks. Now, as I said, this is easier said than done. It's a practice that takes a lot of discipline, and not always it's possible to leave it perfectly. But life is not about perfection. The more we can get closer to this principle, the more we're going to be able to reclaim our time and match our time to our priorities. This is a quote that It's very close to my heart. It's a quote that has served me well for 20 years. For 20 years, I've been leveraging this principle from Dr. Covey to manage my time. And I have tried many different techniques. I have tried many different planners and different ways to approach time management. And I always come back to this simple quote, to this simple principle. The key is not to to prioritize what is on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. The first thing that we need is to have clear what our priorities are. Do you know what your top priorities are? A lot of times that can be the hardest piece, to gain clarity around what our priorities are. Once we have those clear to a certain level or degree of detail, right? Because I can say my family is a priority or my career is a priority, but within those things, for example, your career, your job, what are the top priorities that you're working on right now? And if you have 20 priorities, it's going to be very hard to fit 20 big rocks in a calendar. How can you really identify what are the vital few priorities that are most important? So you always start by scheduling those first and then everything else. I can talk about this topic for hours. I'm very passionate. I'm a nerd when it comes to time management. I'm always looking to make little tweaks to my planning system. I've talked about my planning system here on the podcast before. We've done webinars and productivity boot camps in the past, and it's something that I'm really nerdy about. But anything that I do revolves, again, the simple principle. Everything that I incorporate into my planning system, it's in direct correlation to this quote, to this simple principle of scheduling your priorities first. So here's my invitation for you today. I personally love to plan my week on Sundays, sometimes Monday mornings, first thing in the morning, whatever time works for you. When you're sitting down to plan your next week, I want you to start by making a list of what are your top 3 priorities and making sure that you schedule time for those top 3 priorities on your calendar before you say yes to anything else coming to your calendar. I know this can be hard because by the time you sit down to plan your week might be already filled by someone else's priorities. And that's what it happens. When we don't put our priorities first in our calendar, other people's priorities creep into our calendars. And I believe in being conscious of what is important to other people and make sure that you are a team player and support them with their priorities. But can you find a balance between all of that and make sure that your priorities are always there? So then you know how much time there is available for everything else. Okay, that is my invitation for you this week. I hope you have a great week ahead. I can't wait to talk to you again next Monday, right here on the Leading Yourself podcast.